Titanosaurus' fate is one of those types of mysteries where we don't know if the sea kaiju was either killed by Godzilla or just let go to return to whatever home he came from before encountering Dr. Mifune. People mostly go with the latter of the two, though in the end we the audience never do find out what exactly happened to the creature after its film debut. Since the series going forward never picks up to where this one left off, we may never get to know what happened to Titanosaurus. However, in 2016, Yukiko Takayama, the screenwriter for Terror of Mechagodzilla, wrote a 7-chapter story following the events of the movie for the book Tokusatsu Hyo Volume 5, titled 2075 Meister Titano's Counterattack, which, as you can see from the title, the story takes place 100 years after Terror of Mechagodzilla, and follows Katsura, now revived as Lady K, and Titanosaurus, who is now half machine and referred to as Meister Titano. The characters in the story are never referred to by their film names, and there's a few times in the writing where other key names like Dr. Mifune are about to be said, but quickly get cut off. According to John LeMay of the Lost Films book, the reason the names aren't used is likely because Toa never approved for the story, but looked the other way in respect for Takayama. Now, the story has never gotten any type of official release outside Japan, so there's an obvious language barrier here. But lucky for us fans, Toho Kingdom has an English translation of Takayama's story on their website, 7 chapters in all. It's an interesting little tale that I think most fans of the kaiju may end up liking. And no, if you're wondering, Godzilla isn't in it, or even brought up for that matter. So with that being said, let's dive in. Please consider both liking and subscribing, it really helps. The story starts off with a man simply referred to as Doctor, who is a general manager of one of the many underwater mining domes. Undersea mining has become a big deal in this time, once rare metals were discovered more frequently in the seas of Japan. The Doctor also tells us about the world he lives in, which structures, particularly the mining excavation building, which is half submerged underwater. Not just that, but many buildings are now built further underground. Now, because of the intense water pressures of the deep, normal humans can't actually go undersea and start excavating. No, instead, newly created cyborgs, which can withstand the water pressure, are the ones to take on the task of mining. And according to the writing, there's about 1,000 of them, all residing inside a large underwater dome which are connected by a series of tunnels. Also under the company's ownership is the mightiest creature yet, Meister Titano, half dinosaur, half cyborg. Now, every machine, including Meister Titano, is programmed with artificial intelligence, and can communicate and think for themselves if they wanted to. The Doctor suddenly conjures up a fear that the machines with their vast learning skills could possibly claim desires of their own, inheriting a soul for themselves, as he thinks. He laughs it off though, thinking it could never possibly happen. Chapter 2 opens up explaining how the robots function, particularly with the robot U-types whose appearance resembled that of humans. All the mining machines are left under the water, away from mankind, and rarely ever get visited by them. But they would never go against them since they're all programmed to think that humans are friendly beings. It's here now that we follow a small boy-looking robot called Little One, who is always curious about the world above the water, even going as far as to read books about life from a small library that was made part of the dome. Little One also goes to Meister Titano a lot to hear his stories of the outside world, which the cyborg dino enjoys doing himself. And Little One's reply about wanting to go see the world makes the giant laugh, in a playful way of course. Like I said earlier, robots can communicate with one another, and that includes Titanosaurus, who speaks words like a person would. The conversation with Titano and Little One is admittedly charming, and imagining Titanosaurus behaving in this manner does make him feel very sympathetic. Titanosaurus was always said to be a peaceful creature, and that fact stands here and beyond. As Titano says at the end of his conversation, "Our work here is done for the sake of all those who live in this world." Who would have thought a 60-meter tall dinosaur would be someone to idolize? After their talk, Little One goes back to work. But while out in the dark deep sea, something had brushed his shoulder. He thinks it was a fish, which conjures up a memory he had when he saw a faint outline of a fish, proving that some amount of sunlight can reach the bottom of the dark deep sea. Curiosity had struck the tiny robot, which pushed him further and further to the top. Along the way, he encounters jellyfish. Thanks to the spongy creatures, Little One is able to see for a while underwater. He was overly excited and noticed something even more thrilling to him. He saw what he thought was the sun. Little One had never ventured this far out. Curiosity got the better of him, and he slowly inched his way further and further up, until, without notice, Little One became no more. Robots who abandon their posts are to be eliminated. The doctor was watching all of Little One's actions, and he knew he had to flip the switch to end the tiny robot's life. It was the guidelines of the company, it was something he knew he had to do. Yet, for a moment, he hesitated in ending the robot's life, due to the idea of machines having souls creeping its way back into his head, possibly frightening the man. After Little One's demise, a short meeting was held by the higher-ups of the mining company, with the immediate order to terminate all U-type robots, seeing as how they believed the robots had become too human. The doctor is also attending the meeting but remained silent for most of it, thinking the whole termination thing might be a bit extreme. The plan had been set into action and all the U-type robots were dismantled. Afterwards, the doctor goes to gather some research on Meister Titano, for some reason. Meanwhile, back underwater, Titano snaps in anger after seeing the many robots that were once his friends completely destroyed in front of his eyes. His roar was so mighty it echoed far from the deep, or possibly above land you can hear his cry. After gathering info on Titano, the doctor revives Katsura, who is now called Lady K. It never goes explained on how the doctor managed to bring her back to life, and I really don't understand how this could even be possible, given 100 years have gone by since her sacrifice. Her body would have most likely withered away at this point, unless maybe Ichinose found a way to preserve her body until the day came when someone can bring her back from the dead. I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking things here. Anyway, Lady K is very confused on what's going on, and for a moment she doesn't even realize she's a machine at all, until she notices the scar where she gave her life a century ago to save humanity. The doctor then takes Lady K on a helicopter ride back to her old home over Monozura Island. Then for whatever reason, there's a moment where the doctor gets flustered over seeing K in a swimsuit. Yeah, he also takes her to go swimming. Now a bit of the story from here on out becomes almost that of a romance novel, between K and the doctor who just wants her to feel comfortable in this new world. I'm gonna be honest that the relationship between the two is not the most intriguing part of the story, and even kind of feels like a forced romance that you see in just about everything nowadays. Anyway, after their date, Lady K is dropped off at a hotel room the doctor had reserved for her, where she then thinks to herself on why she was even revived. She then hears a sudden explosion. The shockwave sends her flying from the sofa, knocking her nearly out cold. Though before going under, she sees on the TV an army of machines rampaging through the city, along with Titanosaurus, whom she is stunned to see is still alive. She then wakes up in a car driven by the doctor, whom she goes gaga over his beautifully lightly colored eyes, as the story puts it. Meanwhile, Titano and the army of robots are wreaking havoc upon Tokyo Bay, leaving the place in a cloud of dark smoke and flames. The robots, however, were falling one by one thanks to the controls set by the company to shut them down. However, that only angered Titano even more. Mankind does fight back, but even after a century of advancements in the military, modern weapons still are just not enough to stop a kaiju. Back with their central characters, who are now in the powerless dome the robots have abandoned, the doctor explains to Kay that Meister Titano was once a creature that lived back in her time, and that it is the one leading the robot rebellion. She doesn't believe it, thinking Titanosaurus wouldn't even have the intelligence to lead an army. And that's when the doctor tells her that the creature was given artificial intelligence, giving him the knowledge of that of a human. He then tells her if the creature has any sort of weakness to help them fight back, to which she replies with supersonic waves. But the doctor blurts out that they've already tried that. She then comes to the realization that she was only revived to be a pawn to stop the mighty Titano, since she still carries the controls to which she had for Titanosaurus built into her by the black hole aliens. Now, if all they needed were the controls to stop Titano, then why not just take them out of her instead of bringing her back to life? Or at least try and see if that would still even work on him. Probably would have been the more logical choice than taking her to go swimming. You might have spared a few dozen lives there. The only other logical explanation I could think is that maybe he wanted to see if the creature had any types of weaknesses off the record. But then you're telling me that after Titanosaurus made his public appearance that no other scientists wanted to study the creature afterwards? I don't mean to flag on the story, but this part kinda doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, the doctor then feels guilty about the whole thing after spending all day with her, realizing that though she may be a machine, she still carries the soul of that of a human being. Something he's been disregarding throughout the entire story. It hurts more now that he's garnered feelings for her in the less than probably 8 hours he's known her for. The doctor then, I guess, puts her under as Kay wakes up suddenly in the final chapter, still on the domes with no one around. She searches the place until she finds a submarine, to which she takes out to venture to the bottom of the ocean, while thinking to herself that humanity has won the battle against Titanosaurus. Keep in mind we don't really know that, it's only assumed here. She then suddenly comes across Titano, who destroys the vessel, not even realizing she's inside. Kei manages to escape the sub and drifts into Titano's palm. The creature then soon recognizes her. The two then stare at each other in sadness as Kei says, "I'm sorry. I betrayed you then too, 100 years ago. And now, a century later, it seems I've only betrayed you again. But now, here, at the bottom of the sea, we'll be together. Always." A small jellyfish passes by as it swims away into the darkness, as if it were like a shooting star. So beautiful. Katsura's final words as she laid lifeless in the palm of her old friend. And that was the conclusion of Titanosaurus' sequel story, unofficially of course. Though I do think the story is a decent read, I can't help but feel Takayama most likely wrote this on a whim, just because Godzilla stuff at this time was getting popular. There are segments in the story that don't make a ton of sense, and don't even go explained for that matter. A rewrite or two could have definitely gone a long way to tighten up some story elements. Still, a tale coming from the same person who brought these characters to life in the original film is the most we'll ever get to a sequel for them, whether Toho accepts that or not. I feel a lot of people don't even know this story even exists, so I hope this video does shed some light on the subject. If you want to read the full 7 chapters in English, head on over to Toho Kingdom, who have the full translation on their website. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Godzilla, champion and defender of Earth in the Terror of Godzilla.
Titanosaurus, Mechagodzilla, destroy them!
He holds the front line of battle, while in their spaceships, aliens command a deadly duel. See this ultimate test of power, the Terror of Godzilla, rated G.